I used to work for Lucas in England. I served an apprenticeship in England, and then I was transferred to Toronto, Canada. But in Toronto, Canada, it was so cold in the winter, and we saw the Pasadena Rose Bowl parade one New Year's Day, and we took off for Pasadena, and all we did, we made San Francisco, and we stayed there. But when I got to San Francisco, I worked for British Motors for a while and decided this is where I was going to start a business. So in 1957, I opened a small business in Daly City, which is just a little south of San Francisco. And we were there for a few months, and it got so busy we had to find somewhere big. So we moved into San Francisco at Gough and Turk Street. Yeah, well, the Austin-Healey had just started, and they started when I was in Canada. I worked for Ensign Motors for a while in Canada, and that was Austin-Healey, and I was their tune-up man and doing the electrical as well. And of course, when we got to San Francisco, we started doing the same thing, and then there was so much work I had to start employing mechanics. And we had 5 men working in the shop, and it kept us busy all the time.
When we moved here, I was in what, 7th grade, I think. And after high school, I went to college and then came here right after my first or second year of college, and been full-time here since '77. And I did all the training with the dealer, because we were a new car dealer at the time. And so I was going to all the Jaguar tech schools, MG tech schools, and did that up and starting in '77 when I started here. And then prior to that, I was just working in the shop in the summer, and a summer job after high school and such. So I started actually working in the shop probably as I don't know, 13 or 14, and sweeping the floor and doing the dirty jobs.
I've always been with electrical on British cars, because Lucas is just strictly electrical. And of course, when I was in the Army for 2.5 years, I did nothing but electrical. So my specialty is electrical, Lucas. Well, there is really, because it started with a Triumph motorcycle, and that's what used to happen to them. The amplifier on the motorcycle would die very quickly, and that's where the name came from, was the Prince of Darkness. Now, whether it was it was probably some kind of a rectifier, because it was underneath the saddle, and they had to change the electricity over, and it just wasn't big enough, and it got too hot, and it kept burning out all the time.
Oh, interesting.
So that's where the Prince of Darkness come from. But in San Francisco, there's lots of hills. Well, we would get people coming into the shop and say, my steering wheel is leaking oil. You think, what the hell is a steering wheel doing leaking oil? Well, it turns out if you park your car on a hill like this, and your car is pointing up the hill, the steering box becomes higher than the steering wheel, and the oil runs down the tube and into your lap. And then they will park the car sideways on a hill like this, and they'll be parking like this. And either the left or the right rear wheel will start to leak oil from the differential. So you get a puddle of oil down the right rear wheel or the left rear wheel, depending on which way they park nose in. And because the hills are so steep. And rear springs break all the time in San Francisco. You know, when they're coming down the hill, they go boom. And the other one is that when the Healeys first came out, the 104, the people would drive down the hill, and of course you would come down a hill as that might be, and then you'd hit the flat road here, and when you come down you go boom like this, and the wheel would touch the front parking light and wear the rubber away. So therefore they move the light forwards on the 6-cylinder cars. But other towns have different problems. I drove Jeff Healey through the Eisenhower Tunnel once to a Healey meet up there, and he was in my 104. And he says, you know, Norman, he says, this is the quietest 104 I've ever been in. But little did he know how much underseal was underneath the car.
I met Donald Healey, Jeff Healey, Bick Healey. I met the whole Healey family. And then when we did the international meet in 2002 in Lake Tahoe, I got to meet all of them, because we were pretty busy organizing the meet, so we had everybody there at that time. Jerry Coker and John Sprinzel and all those guys, they all came, so we got to meet them all then.
Are you familiar with the 202 meet?
No, not at all.
They had over 650 cars there.
Yeah. The 02 meet was the 50th anniversary for the Healey.
Okay.
And it was the largest Healey meet ever. anywhere. We had it up at Lake Tahoe, and there was over 700 registrations. It was 625, 650 cars.
Wow.
And people from every state, Canada, Mexico, Europe. 2 cars came from Scotland. The Hunts brought the Around the World rally car. They brought that from Scotland, and there was another car that came from Scotland. There was a guy from Switzerland, a guy from Africa, and so there were people from all over the world. It was a great meet.
I kind of volunteered to run the tour. And normally you have a tour on some of these meets. So I thought, what the heck, I'll run the tour, we get 50, 100 cars, we can handle 50 cars. So we put it out, and we were going to go from South Shore to Squaw Valley, around Lake Tahoe, and have a barbecue at Squaw Valley, sorry. Have a barbecue at Squaw Valley and come back again. So we got 50 cars registered, then we got 100, then we got 200. And what are we going to do with 200 cars on one tour? And then we got to 300.
Yeah.
So we had a meeting at the South Shore with the Horizon, and we got the police there. So we mentioned to the police what our problem was. Oh, this is no problem. We'll take care of that for you. We'll turn the signal lights on so you can get through. So what they did, they gave us a police escort at the front, a police escort at the rear, and they turned the lights green for us all the way to Squaw Valley. That worked out real good.
350 Heelys in a row.
Wow.
One guy was in the middle, and he was driving, and he said, I could see Heelys on the road as far as I could see. And he said, I'd look in my mirror, and it was the same going back that way. Wow.
Yeah. But we had, we ran into, a car show and had to park 700 and odd, 650 odd cars at a car show, and it was interesting. So it was a lot of fun. I got my first Heeley in '84.
1957. There was kind of a story I got that one. He was had a customer that had his car towed into the shop, and he'd run out of oil. What happened, he went off on the side road to a winery, and bang, he hit a rock underneath, and he thought he'd hit the muffler. And he turned onto the highway and took off, and it turns out he didn't hit the muffler, he hit the oil pan. And he split the oil pan open, and he'd had the car 9 months from brand new, and he said, oh, I can't have a car like this. So I bought it. So that was my first one, a BN4 Longbridge, yellow and black. Same yellow as this car right here.
We do all the mechanical and upholstery work. I don't do any of the paint and body work. I have a friend that has a Mustang restoration shop, and he specializes in restorations, and he does all the body work that I need done. He does all that. And then, so I'll strip them down to the frame goes out, frame gets built, all the rust repair gets done to the frame, then we build the frame, and then he gets it back, does the body work, and then we finish building the car. So these, like this one here, just came back. That came back from the paint shop last week. And we'll get the body back, the interior and the electrical and all that stuff finished off and be done with it. Probably most of the people I talk to think it's more because it's a real sporty line than a lot of the other cars. So it looks like it could be, let's say, a modern car, but it's not. So they still have that more modern, sporty look to the car, but it's not really, so it's still an older car. So they kind of blend together that way.
It's a very noticeable car. I was coming down I-5 a few years ago, and a highway patrol car was kind of over here, right following me. I thought, gee whiz, what am I doing wrong? So he followed me for a while, then he pulled in behind me, put his lights on, and I pulled over to the side of the road, and he'd get out of his car, and he'd come around to the passenger side, and he said, I said, I got one of these. Where'd you get your car fixed? But that has happened twice.
So you just got pulled over?
Highway patrol come alongside once, and he says, nice car. And they took off. We used to have one of those.
You had one of those?
My parents had one of those.
Yeah.
We got one of those in the garage.
I did have one customer that we did a car for locally, and he had a guy that kept telling him that same story. And he was a guy that lived right down the street from him. And he kept telling him, if you ever want to sell that car, I want it. I used to have one of those just like that. I want to buy one, the whole story. And the guy eventually decided after many years to sell the car. So he called the guy up, says, I want to sell the car. So, okay, how much? Told him how much. Fine, I'll buy it. Guy came down, wrote him a check, got in the car, drove it home, checked the VIN number. It was his old car.
So he bought back his
He bought back his old car from a neighbor.
How about the 100M we had?
Which one?
The one where there was one in Australia and one in Europe.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's another thing that we were talking about the group of Healey owners with the Healey registry, with the 104 registry. We had a guy purchase a 100M from one of the auctions in Monterey in the late 80s. And he lived in Monterey and didn't make it home in the car. And he ended up bringing the car up to us to check it out and get it running and do whatever it needed. And ended up, it was a mess. I mean, the car was just nowhere near what it should have been at the time. And he decided to get the car registered with the 100M registry. And when he did, the registry contacted him and said, well, there's a problem because there's 2 other cars with the same VIN number. There was a car in, I think, New Zealand and somewhere else in Europe with the same VIN numbers, where the guy that had sold this car had actually made 3 of them. He had ordered 3 heritage certificates and built 300 M's also with the same VIN number and sent them around the world. They did get found, but fortunately, you know, with the body numbers and stuff that are on the cars, we're able to identify which one is real. And his happened to be the real one because all of the cockpit molding and the trunk hood and the trunk all had the right body number for the car that it was supposed to be. But the other 2,
No.
they bought phonies. And I hear from a lot of people all the time of why they like their cars. And I've got customers that are judges and attorneys and everything else, and they just, from driving the car, it's a relaxation. And we had a time when my wife and I took off in the car for a drive and had a babysitter with the kids watching them, and we took off and we ended up just out on the coast and going for a drive, and she made some comment about, gee, we better head home or something like that. And it was, no, we'd stopped for lunch, and we'd left for lunch after that, and then she said, well, when are we going to be home? I was like, well, it might be tomorrow, because we were like about 300 miles up the coast. So, I mean, it's just a relaxing drive. So, I mean, so many times where you just take off, and you find places that you don't normally see in driving other cars, you know, little back roads and little wineries that, you know, if you're driving your daily car, you don't see that stuff. So, I mean, it's just, that's what I enjoy.
We've done a lot of tech sessions on these Healeys, and it probably started in about 1981 when I joined the Bay Area Club. And whenever they had a West Coast meet, I would volunteer to do a tech session. And of course, David was always there with me, so I'd run the tech session and he'd kind of stand there for a while. And as the years have gone by, it's kind of changed hands. Now he runs a tech session.
All right.
But we had one meet in, I think it was in Colorado meet, and we counted, I think it was 86 people in the audience in a tech session. And we must have had them for what, a couple hours?
Yeah, about 3 or 4 hours.
We had them for a long time, all kinds of questions coming out, and people seem to like it.
It's one of the only marks that I know of that, you know, that there's such a collection of information available about the car. You know, like with the concourse stuff, there's just there's no other cars that they see this book and they go, you know, nobody else has that stuff. So, I mean, there's just a wealth of knowledge, like you said, that's available for them that they can go on to restore a car, whether it's in concourse or not. You know, it's nice to be able to just put when you're doing the car, you know, if the front springs had a certain color stripe on it, you may as well do it while you're doing the car. It's not that big a deal, and at least keeps it close to being what they were.
Right.
So, yeah, it makes it nice that there's no other cars that I know of that have that much information.
I have written a lot of tech articles for the Healey magazines. And a number of years ago, back about 1981, 82, somebody said to me, why don't you put them in a book form? So we've got a book called Tech Talk. And all the tech articles that I've ever written that have been in the magazine, and some of the things we've learned here in the service department are in this magazine.
Yeah, we update it you know, every few months we update the pages on it.
All right.
It's got 256 pages in there right now. We got to look at Sheila as well.
Norman's my dad, David's my brother. I actually started doing the filing when I was about 12. And then I started working in the parts department with our parts guys, locating insurance jobs, finding all the parts for the insurance. And so went to Delta College for business and animal science, actually. And it just kind of crept and crept until I was locating the old parts and running the office. Well, I'm always still looking for the glove box locks for BJ-8s. Nobody has them, and you just can't find them. I can find one little piece of it, and that's all I can find. Yeah, with some of the car shows, I get to meet them. Most of them know me a lot better than I know them. I talk to them on the phone, and I'm supposed to recognize their voice right away. So that's kind of what I do. I go through every catalog that we get, and I basically see it all, and just then somebody mentions that they're looking for something, and my brain just kind of goes, oh, wait a minute, I saw that, and I start looking and I find it. It's a lot of fun. You know, and people have a lot of fun with their cars, and everybody's usually pretty happy about it. So you know, it's fun to find stuff that other people can't find. I was driving my dad's 104 outside of, just left Vernal, and my daughter was with me, and I'm following him down the road there to Salt Lake City, and he pulled into the right lane. I pulled in behind him. We're traveling along on this road that we thought was right. Suddenly my dad sees the oil truck up ahead, and it's a freshly oiled road. And he touches his brakes, and I barely touch mine, and I spin the Heeley, and I spin it all the way out into the salt flats backwards. We disappeared in a cloud of salt. No damage to the car or us, just lots of salt buried that he's still finding. That's the picture after we pushed it out of the salt flats. You can see the salt trail being pushed out, my dad's car in the back. No, I didn't set a speed record, but I was, I think, the only Heeley that went out on the salt flats.
The speed of the points that open, the faster they open, the bigger the spark. So under cranking conditions, the points just